Welcome to the Jeremiah Patterson Show. This is your TJPS Evening News Rundown. I'm in a bit of a different location today. I'm in my garage for tonight's broadcast. We're going to start here with thing number one. After the Civil War, the integration of blacks into functioning society was not widely accepted by whites. So to keep black people oppressed and out of the mainstream public, segregation was put in place. Black people were systematically excluded from the societal, educational, and public institutions that white Americans had access to. Segregation laws, commonly referred to as Jim Crow laws, ensured that black people were relegated to inferior facilities or denied access altogether. Schools for black children were underfunded and poorly equipped. Restaurants often refused service entirely. Libraries were essentially off limits or stocked with substandard materials. And churches meant to be sanctuaries were segregated to reinforce a sense of racial hierarchy. Even basic human needs like access to water were weaponized. Separate water fountains were labeled whites only and colored, with those designated for black individuals frequently unclean and poorly maintained. This system of segregation wasn't just about separation, it was about a deliberate strategy to reinforce and perpetuate white supremacy. By denying African Americans equal access to education, economic opportunities, and basic public services, white-dominated institutions sought to ensure that black individuals would remain economically, socially, and politically disadvantaged. These policies stripped black communities of opportunities to thrive and create systematic barriers to equality, forcing them into a subordinate, essentially, position in society. This, in turn, upheld the false narrative of racial inferiority, maintaining a dominance of white individuals in every aspect of public and private life. One of the major career fields where black people were limited, segregated, and also had negative perceptions about them, and essentially their talent and their brilliance, was the military. And essentially, it was particularly in the United States Air Force where racial segregation started in 1918. Blacks once again were viewed as inferior, and flying was definitely not an option. But President Franklin D. Roosevelt finally relented after facing pressure from black reporters, his wife, and others. He then made the program for black men to fly possible. These men here on your screen, the Tuskegee Airmen, could actually do their job. Something really cool in history. For the first time, a black American military pilot program existed in the United States Armed Forces. They served during World War II, and they were part of a trial program to train black aviators at the Tuskegee Army Airfield Base in Tuskegee, Alabama. The Tuskegee Airmen were tasked with escorting American bombers over Italy, flying more than 15,000 missions, and destroying over 260 enemy aircrafts and numerous ground targets, including railroad trucks and enemy supplies. Their success essentially directly challenged prevailing racist attitudes within the military and society. Many doubted the ability of a black man to succeed in complex and high-stress roles like piloting aircraft. The Tuskegee Airmen essentially proved that these doubts were wrong, showing that the skill and the courage are not determined by race. The exemplary performance of the Tuskegee Airmen played a role in Harry S. Truman's decision to essentially desegregate the U.S. Armed Forces with Executive Order 9981 in 1948. This was a major step towards racial equality in the military and set a precedent for the broader civil rights movement. The Tuskegee Airmen not only fought fascism abroad, but also against racial injustice here at home. Their courage and achievements inspired generations of African Americans to demand equal rights and opportunities. They became a symbol of perseverance, excellence, and the breaking of racial barriers in American society. Their legacy is commemorated through museums and educational programs, ensuring that their story remains to essentially inspire future generations. The Tuskegee Airmen, this remarkable part of history that is sort of obscure. And I tell you this story because as of this week, when Donald Trump became president again, effectively, the United States Air Force has removed the course that includes the teachings of the Tuskegee Airmen and of World War II female pilots. Per that Trump executive order, essentially ending things like the Equal Employment Act of 1965 and taking DEI out of the military, things like this are starting to transpire in the United States. Armed forces, new members of the armed forces will no longer be taught about the Tuskegee Airmen or female pilots in the U.S. military in our history. Also, major companies are starting to revoke DEI, including Amazon being one of them, Target being one of them, Walmart, McDonald's, among many major corporations revoking and pulling it back. This here is a screenshot of a poster here from the civil rights era. Essentially, the goal is, the message is to boycott. Do not work or do not go shop where you would not be hired. Do not spend your money and actively financially contribute to organizations where you know that you would not be wanted. And that is what we're seeing in the mass rescindance of DEI here. If corporations are willing to do this, put your money in other places. Put your money in minority-infused places that actually celebrate, diversity, equity, and inclusion, are not just doing it for political profit or for financial gain to get the hype off of something just because it's a hashtag trending on social media. Be sure that you are doing your part and you are actively protesting and boycotting and not giving these companies your money amid what they're doing here. It's just absolutely insane. So that is happening. DEI being revoked at a massive level. That's thing number one. This is thing number two, the California wildfires. It rained today for the first time in months in the state, helping firefighters with their efforts. However, it poses the threat of toxic ash, which contains harmful chemicals and pollutants, such as coal and ash from the wildfires. They can contaminate the air, water, and soil, and also pose a major risk to human health. As of now, at least 28 people have died due to the ferocious wildfires powered by winds and dry conditions. Thousands of homes and structures have been completely eradicated. Whole communities essentially completely decimated. The cost of LA fires is expected to be somewhere around $30 billion up to $250 billion. That's thing number two. This is thing number three, bird flu. 3 weeks ago, a poultry farm was on high alert after a bird flu outbreak killed 344,000 turkeys in Michigan. Earlier this week, there were more than 100,000 birds in Long Island that were affected by bird flu as well. Today in Massachusetts, their bird farms essentially are on high alert after bird flu has now entered the state. The FDA is recommending pet food companies revisit their safety plans amid the bird flu outbreak. Cats essentially are most vulnerable to the bird flu. So watch what you're feeding your animals and stay up to date on FDA guidance. What we have right now, since the health agencies essentially are on pause per Trump administration's gag order until they get a new appointee, which is astonishing. But we literally are in the dark with health reports and all the information from our major premier health agencies in the United States. Today, Minnesota infectious disease expert Michael Osterholm warned that the wind-blown bird feces may be another way to transmit the disease. Quote, "Today, I am certain that we are seeing clouds of dust with bird feces in that, and we are beginning to see what I would consider to be almost an environmental type of disease, similar to the transmission of what we see called valley fever, where in fact that's a fungus that grows in the environment and that on windy days it blows with the dust and you can inhale it. I think we're going to see the same thing with H5N1, which is bird flu. I think we're going to see more and more situations with wind-driven activity that you're going to see virus show up. What does that mean? I do not believe the price of eggs is going to come down anytime soon, because until the poultry industry realizes that they have airtight barns with HEPA filter intake, they're going to continue to see the virus show up and show up and show up and show up. Unless it changes in the wildlife, unless it changes in the migratory waterfall, it's going to continue to be a problem for them." End quote. That's thing number 3. This is thing number 4, a trade war. Mass deportation is underway in the United States, and the Trump administration is facing an amalgamation of hurdles. First, it was Mexico. Now today, Colombia said that it will not accept deportation flights until Trump treats immigrants with, quote, the dignity that they deserve. In response, Trump announced a 25% tariff on the nation and ordered visa restrictions on people seeking citizenship in the United States from Colombia. To counter that, they have launched a 50% tariff on the United States. Because of that, the prices of coffee, crude oil, and cut flowers in the U.S. are going to go up. Mass deportation flights will continue as the administration is now essentially telling ICE to deport people faster because they need to meet their quotas. Up to 1,000 people a day out of the country. And they're not being shy about going into elementary schools either. This is Tom Holman, Trump's immigration border czar.
I want to go back to who you're deporting. Aside from the long list of executive actions, the administration said it will no longer tell ICE agents they have to avoid sensitive locations, including schools, hospitals, churches. Benjamin Huffman, the acting Homeland Security Secretary, said in a statement, criminals will no longer be able to hide in America's schools and churches to avoid arrest. What criminals are hiding in schools? Middle schools, elementary schools. You going to go into those?
How many MS-13 members are at age 14 to 17? Many of them. So, look, if it's a national security threat, public safety threat, and what you need to understand is a case by case. Name another agency, another law enforcement agency that has those type of requirements that they can't walk into a school or a doctor's office or a medical campus. No other agencies have those standards. These are well-trained officers with a lot of discretion, and when it comes to sensitive location, there's still going to be supervisory review. So it's not like it's an open issue, but ICE officers should have discretion to decide if a national security threat or a public safety threat in one of these facilities, then there should be an option for them to make the arrest.
But someday you could go into those schools and grab people who are just in the country illegally.
On a case-by-case basis, depending who they are, what the circumstances are.
Remember, folks, cruelty is the point. This is a teacher in Texas, essentially a substitute teacher, inviting ICE to raid his school, saying that he has many students who don't even speak English. A substitute teacher has come under fire, essentially for inviting ICE to come to the school. This is a direct quote from his post on Twitter, quote, y'all should come to Fort Worth, Texas, to Northside High School. I have many students who don't even speak English, and they are in 10th to 11th grade. They have to communicate through their iPhone translator with me. The United States government should totally overhaul our education system in Texas. I'm sorry, he's saying the United States Education Department should totally overhaul our school system in Texas. He also alluded to the fact that there are lots of illegals at the Texas school. So he's facing backlash for that. But yeah, I mean, cruelty is the key here. They're going to go into elementary schools. They're going to go into places of worship. They're going to go into hospitals. They are planning to do mass deportation on a huge scale level, regardless of who it affects and who is going to be endangered by this. This has been the TJPS Evening News Breakdown. I'm your host, Jeremiah Patterson. Please follow us for more. Make sure to subscribe, comment, like, share, and follow us on Substack, Blue Sky, and more for all things news, politics, and history.